Hello everybody, welcome to the Old Gold and Black. I'm Tom Rouse and thank you for joining me today for this little look forward to the season and looking at the away days in particular and which grounds I think that you as a fan should definitely try and go to, the ones you should try and avoid and the ones where it's sort of in the middle is okay. And don't forget to drop a like on the video, that way you'll help raise money for the Haven in Wolverhampton today. I've just thrown in the first donation of £8 to the charity, so thank you everybody who's liked the videos so far. Every 100 likes equals a £1 donation, and as well subscribe to the channel because every subscriber helps build the channel and gets things ready for the season and what have you. So if you wouldn't mind and pop the bell on as well, that would be a great help, so thank you very much. Anyway, let's get straight into it then. First of all, we're going to start with a little tier of teams to avoid, or the games to avoid. I'm going to start off with Bournemouth. A long way to travel, very small stadium, so much so that the allocation for tickets last year for Wolves was only 1,000, which is crazy to think that a Premier League team has such a small capacity. We've seen as well that it's unsafe at times. If you remember Manchester City, at the beginning of the 17-18 season, they scored a last-minute winner there, and it was absolute carnage, and people ended up on the pitch and also. So it's not the best away day, but it is by the sea. So, I imagine that if you can get a ticket, it would be good. The second one, similar in a way, the Amex, Brighton and Hove Albion, a long way to travel. And as well, it's not anywhere near the town centre. It's a long way out. So I think the only real way of going there is on the coach, or the most efficient way of going there would be on the coach. Otherwise, I think trains and taxis and stuff from the town centre into the stadium can be quite difficult to get hold of. The third one in this avoid is Chelsea. The atmosphere there back in March was absolutely appalling. I know that it might be different now under Fat Frank, but when we went there previously under Sarri, it was a very, very negative atmosphere. I think it was their first home game after the League Cup final, and we were throwing abuse at old Caballero. No, not Caballero, the other one, Kepa, Arrizabalaga. It's not too difficult to get to. I think any ground in London is reasonable to get to in terms of the trains and the tubes and stuff. It's quite fair. Chelsea probably ranks bottom in terms of atmosphere in the whole of the Premier League, and that's saying something. The next one is another London ground, and that's Crystal Palace. It's a long journey all the way down to South London. It's a horrible, horrible journey on the coach. And then inside the ground, it's very old, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a big beam, which I remember finding it very difficult to look around when Wolves are attacking the far end, the left-hand side as you look at the pitch from the away section, and that it can be quite difficult. The atmosphere as well is famous for being quite intimidating, but when we went there in October last year, there was very little intimidation, very little singing or anything from the home supporters, apart from singing Glad All Over, which is not exactly the most intimidating song ever. And when we went there as well, it was pouring it down with rain like it is today, and the turnstiles were flooded, so pretty much as soon as you came out the turnstile, there's a huge puddle. A few Wolves fans did go for a little swim, but for the normal Wolves fan, it was a bit difficult to navigate as soon as you came into the ground. The next one is Watford and Vicarage Road, a little bit of a hodgepodge of a ground. It's not quite finished. Maybe in a few years, once they've finished all the little bits to it, it might look a little bit better. It certainly is better than it was 12 years ago, the first time that I visited, 2007. For that FA Cup fixture. But the atmosphere there is very odd because we went there 2 weeks after the FA Cup semi-final that they beat us in, and we threw it away, of course. And apparently they were taunting us all throughout the game from the opposite end. You couldn't hear a single thing. So acoustically, which is ironic considering that Elton John is their most famous fan, acoustically that ground is terrible. You cannot hear anything from other stands from the away section, but we did have a very enjoyable game there last year. So another London ground. I promise I haven't got a vendetta against London clubs, but West Ham, I think generally most fans agree, but also I think most fans will have had a good away day at the London Stadium, at the Olympic Stadium, because West Ham are not very good there. You can understand the frustration that they've got. The pitch is miles away from the stand, but more so than that, the stands have these huge gaps in them between sections, which is the reason why it's so difficult to generate any sort of atmosphere there, because of these great vast gaps between stands. It also has a huge walk back from the stadium back to the Tube or to the Westfield Shopping Centre, which is where we parked last year. It's a very, very long journey back to the car. Luckily we won, but I think if we'd have lost it, it'd been twice as long. And the last ground in the avoid tier, and now it's nothing against the club. I know there's a little bit of rivalry between Wolves and Norwich, but it's not because of that, it's because of the distance and the date of that fixture. It's the 21st of December, a couple of days before Christmas. The last thing you want to be doing is going on a trek to East Anglia, where there is no motorway that goes east from the Midlands as well. So it's going to be a hell of a trek. I probably will do, because I haven't been to the Norwich ground as a fan. I got invited in there as a child when we were on holiday in Lowestoft, and we went and we were invited in by a director, and we sat in the dugout and things like that, and it was lovely. Of course, there is a little bit of history as well with Norwich, with the playoffs and what have you, but that's not the reason why they're in this list. Okay, so the middle tier, the next tier, is the ones that, if you fancy it, then you should go to these ones, and then we'll come to the go-tos in a minute. So the first one on this list is Everton and Goodison Park. It was announced yesterday that Everton will be eventually moving away from Goodison into some super stadium out on the docks. So it could be one of Wolves' last visits there. Although I think it's 5 years' time that Everton will be leaving. But it's quite a good atmosphere. I like how compact it is. The very, very steep stands as well, particularly the one opposite the away section. And you've got the Gladys Street end as well that generates quite a lot of noise. I quite like the old-fashioned nature of the ground. However, I have gone to Goodison in the past and sat further back in the stand, and it's very difficult to see. Similar to Anfield, which I'll come to in a minute, like looking through a letterbox at times. It's a traditional, old, good ground. I like it. Next one is Man City. Of course, the atmosphere there back in January was abysmal. I didn't actually go to that one. I did go to the League Cup game last season, or the season before last. And it's a very, very impressive stadium, very much steeper and much bigger than it appears on television, and I imagine that when it's a big game that they can generate some sort of noise, but it's certainly one to go to just to see the impressive nature of the stadium and of the club. In a similar way, their neighbours, Manchester United, is another ground to go to because of the history there. I think they've done quite a good job of keeping some of the things like the old tunnel, and there's the clock for the Munich disaster, and lots of different little things like that, which I sort of like at football grounds. Opposite to Manchester City, it seems a lot smaller and a lot closer to the pitch than it appears on television. When you see Old Trafford on telly, you look right up into the top of those stands, and it looks like it's miles and miles away from the pitch, but it is all actually very, very close to the pitch, and it's difficult to generate much noise in that ground as well as an away support. It seems like you're making a lot of noise, but the way that it travels around the ground, it doesn't actually come across. But the United atmosphere is famous for being bad. They've just introduced a singing section, I think, in that opposite corner to where the away fans are, but that didn't really make a lot of noise. It's very touristy, not a lot of chanting or atmosphere at any point in the game. So if you're going for that when you go to an away game, I would avoid Manchester United, but it's a good historical ground to go and witness and experience. The next one is one which I think a lot of people would probably miss if they were given the choice, but that's Southampton, St Mary's. Twice I've been there, once in 2017 and then 2019. It's a nice ground. It's one of these like identikit stadiums that you could pick up and put anywhere, the big bowl. So that's not really what you need to go there for, but the ground is not too far away from the town. When we went there last season, we were very, very early, and we were able to walk into town in about 10-15 minutes and have a couple of drinks and then come back. Liverpool is in this tier as well. As I mentioned with Everton, the view from the away section can be terrible from the Anfield Road lower. I've sat before on Boxing Day 2009, sat on the very back row of that stand, and you cannot see a thing. Everybody's standing up, the roof's coming down like that, so you're looking through a gap like that, and I can't tell you anything about that game at all. I've been there as well for the FA Cup and sat upstairs when we had a much bigger allocation. That was an amazing view, and you could really take in the atmosphere there. The last game of the season last year, I was quite near the front, had a lovely view, but the atmosphere there, for this famous atmosphere that they've got, particularly that last game of the season when at one point they were winning the title, it was quite disappointing really. There's 55,000, nearly 60,000 people in there, and it should be raucous. It's again similar to United, lots of tourists there, lots of people who are perhaps, I don't know, disengaged with the club a little bit because of not winning a title for 30 years now. I don't know, a few reasons behind that perhaps. The last one in this tier could be a little bit of a shock for you, but that's Burnley. Now, I went to Burnley back in 2010 when we were first in the Premier League, and the progression it's made from then to now, and you could see the benefit of being in the Premier League is evident when you go to Turf Moor. I remember going there before and it stunk of urine. And it was a proper old-fashioned, football league ground. The away end had not been looked after for years, and it was horrible. But then when we went back at the end of March this year, it was a much nicer. It had all been painted. There were women's toilets, which I don't think had been there before. And then inside the ground, you've got these old wooden seats, but obviously you're in an away end. You're not going to sit down, are you? So we didn't really sit on them. But it was quite nice to sort of have that throwback to days gone by, where you've got wooden seats. You're all cramped in together. I don't remember there being any sort of restriction from my view anywhere near the front. I don't think it was that bad near the back either. I think it's quite a good ground in terms of that. And also you've got Burnley Cricket Club, which is where James Anderson started his career at, literally backing onto one of the stands there. So it's quite a good ground. It's not too far either. I quite like it, and it's a traditional old ground. That's what I like about Turf Moor. So then on to the final tier, the best ones, the ones that you must go to this season. We'll start off with what I consider probably to be the lowest of this, the one that could have been put into the if you want sort of section, and that's Arsenal. It's a fantastic ground for me. I've been there twice now. It's the best club ground, I think, in terms of facilities and the history around the ground. I know that they've moved from Highbury, obviously. I never went to Highbury, but they've managed to put those little statues that they brought around, and the trophies that they have put around the inside of the ground as well. There's lots of little things like that I like about the Emirates. And there are some sections that are quite corporate, but the view is good. The atmosphere that you're able to generate in the away end is very good as well. That's what lets it down a little bit, is that the home fans don't generate any sort of atmosphere at all at the Emirates. And it's, again, similar to Liverpool and to United and City, tourist venue. Next one in this section is Leicester City. Last year it was the closest away game. Obviously we've got another one that's a little bit closer this year, but it's the first game of the season. The tickets have already sold out, so unfortunately if you're watching this and you think, oh yeah, I will go to Leicester, you can't. I've been there a couple of times. Lovely, another identikit stadium, exactly the same as Southampton, but it's a little bit more of an atmosphere there. There's good parking, good facilities around the ground as well, and despite the result last year, it was quite an enjoyable afternoon there. The next two I've put in for my own personal challenge this year, or quest, because I've never been to Newcastle United and I've never been to Sheffield United either. So those two grounds are two that I will definitely be going to this season, just because I've never been to them before. Sheffield, I know is not too far away, it's quite easy to get to, and we've had I've been to Sheffield Wednesday a couple of times over the last couple of years. Newcastle is a trek, but by all accounts, the night out up there is very, very good, and as well, it's a stadium that I've always wanted to go to. I've always wanted to sit right up at the top in the gods, looking down on the team. So yeah, they're two that I'm definitely going to this season. Next one is Aston Villa. First Midlands derby in the Premier League for 7 years, or 8 years, I think, by the time that we actually go to play at Villa Park. I've been there a couple of times before as well, and the atmosphere, particularly in the last one, 2018, it was very, very intimidating, and I enjoyed the intimidation because you don't get that when you go to like many other grounds. There was a little bit of a rivalry in terms of locality. It was a competitive rivalry that season, and that's what made it interesting. We were going for the title, they were going for promotion, and it was intimidating. There's been all this stuff that's bubbled over the last couple of seasons as well on Twitter. We'll see how that translates to real life next season. But I can't wait to play Villa in a big local derby. The only thing is they give a very small allocation, particularly for local rivalries. I don't know why, but they will have about 2,000, 2,200 tickets, something like that, in a 40, 50,000 seater stadium. But it's a very, very good away day. I do like going to Villa. And the final away day is Spurs. I think their new ground looks fantastic from the outside and from what I've seen on television. I went to the old White Hart Lane. The atmosphere there was quite good, but I want to see how that's translated to this new stadium. I want to see the new big bank, which I think is the north stand. I might be wrong there. It might be the south stand. It looks like it's going to be the top ground in the Premier League to visit this season, and I can't wait to go. And then if there's been any fans from other clubs watching this video thinking about Wolves, I'll give you an honest reflection on Wolves and the Molineux. In terms of location, the Molineux is perfect, and it's unlike any other ground in that it is right in the middle of the city centre. You will only have to walk 10 minutes from the train station to get to the ground. There are plenty of pubs that away fans can drink at in Wolverhampton. It's also unique in terms, if you bring a big enough allocation, you have the whole of the bottom tier of the Steve Bull stand, so you are able to support your team throughout the whole game, whereas most of the stadiums put you behind a goal and you're only really supporting them in one half of the game. However, I think that might be changing next year. I think the plan is to put them in the quadrant of the North Bank for most of the season, but we'll wait and see what happens there. If you do sit in that section, you will have safe stand-in for the first time, so that might be something to look forward to. One negative, though, is if you do sit in this bottom of the Steve Bull, you will have the sun in your eyes, if it is sunny, for most of the game. I think it's one possible design flaw, or the reason why Wolves put their away fans there is because the view when the sun is out is terrible. And it has been said by many, many pundits and many other away fans that Wolves have managed to create this very good atmosphere in the Premier League. I think there's been a couple of exceptions this season. The Huddersfield game, where we all left very, very early and it didn't look very good. But apart from that, we're able to generate a very, very good and intimidating atmosphere for away fans. And I think it's because as well, the away fans, when they're close to the South Bank, it does generate a very, very good atmosphere within the ground anyway. Thank you very much for watching today's video. I know it's very long, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments section where you are most looking forward to going to next season, or which grounds haven't you been to before that you're looking forward to going to. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Wolves and just general Premier League content, and pop the bell on as well so you don't miss any future uploads. And don't forget to check back in a couple of days for a prediction of the Premier League and where I think everybody's going to finish next year. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.